Okay, this video is going to take you through an introduction of the JOptionPane class. And so we're going to see what this class actually does. As you can see, we have some partial code in here of a program that is using the JOptionPane. And what I asked the students in class was, what is missing from this program? And hopefully you would be able to see that it's missing the class header, the public class, and then the name of the program. And it's also missing the main method header. So this is just showing you what the JOptionPane has in it, and it's not intended to be the complete program. So you'll notice you should be able to have an idea of what's going on in this program. And so I asked students this to figure out, well, what do you think is going on in this program? So there are some things that you know already that will give you some clues. So first of all, you notice that you've got string store name, so you know that you're going to have 1, 2, 3 memory locations set up in the computer memory. One's going to be store name, one's number of pickles, and one is pickle price. You can also see that there's a question, what did you purchase, or where did you purchase the pickles? And so you can see the question is being asked. Obviously this is going to be asking the user, where did you purchase the pickles? And then there's a clue, another clue word in here is input. So it's asking the user for input, specifically where the user purchased the pickles. And then you can see that the user is asked how many pickles they ate and how much did they pay for the pickles. Alright, so those kind of things are, you can tell, even though you have all this JOptionPane stuff that you've never seen before. And then you also see in here two other lines that are a little bit different, and you notice they have this concatenation between strings. So you have strings and variable calls, and so there's another string and a variable call. So you know that this is going to be, this is a concatenation, and if you look at this, it says show message. Well, that's a pretty good clue right there. This is actually going to show this message right here on the screen to the user. So it's going to just summarize what they told the computer, that you ate a certain number of pickles from a certain store at a cost of blah blah blah. So this is just a kind of a basic example of how things are working. And then of course another show message that says that that is awesome. So this is the basic idea. But now, what is this JOptionPane stuff? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what the JOptionPane thing is. Now, what I had students do is I had them open up a pickle purchase, I think it is, program from the module for day 3 of this week. And so they were supposed to type in the code that they that's not on there. They were supposed to type this import statement on here. They were supposed to type in this actually I think they had to type in this and all of this. Now this wouldn't be a bad thing for you to do if you're watching this video. For right now, if you just want to save time, you can just watch what's going on here. And so here's what students were supposed to have typed in to their program, and this is some of this code was already given, but they had to type in the JOptionPane stuff and so forth. So, and then they were supposed to compile it and run it, and so this is what they saw. So you go like this, and now we're going to see what is the JOptionPane class doing. And so they would run it, and it would say, where did you purchase the pickles? And so you might type Trader Joe's, and so they're typing this Trader Joe's in something that, well, where does this come from? And so we're typing in what's a thing called a dialog box. And so they type that in, and then, oh, here's another box. And just to see what's going on here, we'll just kind of slow it down here a little bit. You see that the first JOptionPane show input dialog, and this is a dialog box, asks where did you purchase the pickles, and then it says how many pickles did you eat, and that's the JOptionPane show input that's producing that. And as you can see on the very same line with an assignment operator, whatever the user types in here, let's say the user typed I ate 10 pickles, and then they click OK, well, you can know by looking at that line of code that they're going to store it in a variable called num of pickles. And then they ask how many, it asks how many did you pay, how much did you pay, $13.36. And then now here is a message. It says you ate a certain number of pickles. Well, you ate 10 pickles. That's what I typed as the user. And so you can see it's doing everything that we've done before, except for it's doing it in dialog boxes. And so there's that show message. It's showing the message. That is awesome. Alright, so that is what this program does. And so if we go back over here and look at our notes, I just wanted to basically review a couple things in class. So I asked, well, what is the scanner class, what is that used for? And hopefully you would say it's used to read user input. So that's really what you should put in this first blank. For one, it's used to read user input. The decimal format class is used to format decimals. Okay, that's where we controlled how many decimals there were, and we could add symbols like dollar signs and stuff to decimals or numeric values. So then we come to the JOptionPane class. So this also has an import statement like the other two classes have, and you should know where that goes. And the JOptionPane class is used for dialog boxes, which is what we just demonstrated. Now the question that I asked next was, what method is used to get user input? And so hopefully this is something you would be able to see, that the method, as we discussed in chapter 1, is where we called this the main method. And if you remember, we had a thing called system.out.println, and that println and print were methods. But if you notice, the names of these methods came before parentheses. And so this, a lot of times this parentheses will indicate that we have a method. It's the main method. And then the other thing that we saw was, let's say we had this. So here we had the print method. And so it was displaying output, it was displaying this. So that was the print method. It was previous to the parentheses. And so what we have here is that the method to get user input, which the input is right here. This is the line that's where we're getting user input. So it's the show input dialog method. The show input dialog method. And then now, which method is used to display output on the screen? Now before, we used the print statement, the println method, but this uses the show message dialog method because it displays the output in a dialog box. So the show message dialog box is what does that. Now as we look at this, the next question says, why is the data type string for num of pickles and pickle price? So I don't know if you noticed that when you were looking at this code, but that should make you think, well, this is kind of curious. So you notice they're asking for a number, an amount. And so let's say that the user types 6 in there, and I have no idea why it went to a thick thing. That's ridiculous. Okay, so it says, how many pickles did you eat? And it says 6. Now 6 is a number, that's an int. Well, why is it storing it in a string? Well, here's what happens. So why is the data type a string? And that's because all input received through an input dialog box is received as a string. All input received through an input dialog box is received as a string. So the compiler, if a user types a number, numeric data like an int or a double, if they type a word, doesn't matter what it is, that input is considered to be a string. And so really what's going on here is that if it goes, how many pickles did you eat? The user types a 6. It's not a 6 by itself. It's actually like a 6 that has quotation marks around it. And so what it's doing then is now it's going to go store that string into num of pickles. That's why it has to be a string. So that's how that works. And so what we show here then is we go to the next question. And the next question says, well, what is the error message? I mean, why can't you do that? Well, you get an error message. What is the error message if you try to store numeric data from an input dialog box in an int or a double storage location? And so the question is go ahead and look at this. That's not what I wanted to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to an int. If you want it to be an int, well, let's just make it an int. We're asking for cost, so let's make this a double. And let's see what happens. And so it's going to be important that you know how to read the error message. And so you can see down here that it says on line 8, which is right here highlighted, it says here's a problem. You've got incompatible types. Well, what do you mean incompatible stripes or types? Well, a string cannot be converted to an int. Well, what does that have? What does that mean? What does that mean that a string can't be converted to an int? Well, if you remember, I said whatever the user inputs is read as a string. So if they go, I ate 6 pickles, then this is considered to be a string. It's a 6, but it's a string. And so in the memory location that's an int, let's say, if it's trying to store this string in the int, that's not going to work. You got to store ints in ints. And the same thing with the double. And so the string, which is the user input, which is coming from an input dialog box, cannot be stored in an int, because in order to be stored in the int, it would have to be converted to an int. And with the code we have now, it cannot be converted to an int. We will learn later, though, how to convert a string to an int. And so let's go ahead and look at the next situation. And so hopefully you wrote down the error message there. If you didn't, you have to rewind a little bit, go back and see what the error message said. Now, how can you create multiple lines within a dialog box? So what we've already talked about is the main stuff that we wanted to talk about, but we just want to throw one more thing in. How can you create multiple lines? So we will change this back to a string and this back to a string. And let's say that you have kind of a longer sentence in your message, but you want that whole message to be in one dialog box, and maybe you want it to go on multiple lines. Well, let's say that we wanted where it says at cost to start a new line within the dialog box. We're going to put the escape sequence that we learned in chapter 1, \, which is above your enter key, and then an N. So if you remember, that tells the compiler go to the next line now. So after store name, it's going to go to the next line now and then print the rest. And so we will just show how that is the case, and we will run it. So we're going to go Safeway and $4 and $3.45. And so you can see that after the store name, it went to the next line now and printed the rest of the line. Alright, so the escape sequence \n is what you can use for that. And then finally, what we want to do is prepare you a little bit for tonight's homework assignment, which is a Mad Lib. And if you don't know what a Mad Lib is, this will kind of show it. But let's say if I were to ask you right now, what is a I'd ask you maybe, oh, that didn't work. To let's say I asked you, give me a singular noun, or yeah, singular noun. And then I said, give me a past participle version of a verb. And if you remember, a past participle has the word have or has or had in front of it, and so we want a past participle. So if you had the word had, and then whatever you would put after it, that's what I want. And then I would say, and then maybe I'll say, give me the same noun as the first one, and then give me another past participle form of the word. Alright, so let's say the singular noun, you said, let's say a baseball bat. And then you gave me a past participle, and you said run, which is past participle, because you would say he had run a long distance, so you might say run. And then the same noun as the first one, baseball bat, and then the last one would be something different, and maybe we said bought. So he had bought a lot of things, so bought. Alright, now what happens here is then what I would do, so I would ask you for these words, but you wouldn't know what I was doing. What I was doing is I was taking a saying, penny saved, a penny saved is a penny earned. And then you would, without knowing that, would just give me these random singular nouns and past participles, and then I would put these back into this saying and to replace words that were there. And so we would do something like a penny, and then we would do saved and penny and then earned. We're going to replace those. So what would happen is I would then tell you, well, a baseball bat, and then run is a baseball bat bought. Okay, so of course that doesn't make sense, and the idea is to get something that sounds kind of funny or kind of strange, and so that's a Mad Lib. And so that's what you're going to be doing in your homework tonight, or when you get to the Mad Lib program. You're going to be using dialog boxes to ask the user for different words, and then you're going to put those words then into a saying, and you'll see some more instructions on the Mad Lib. Okay, so that is the introduction to the JOptionPane, which is used to create dialog boxes in your programs.